Events bring us together, inspire us, and provide us with lasting memories. But trying to run an event agency while creating these special moments can be difficult, demanding, and sometimes even dreadful, especially if you're trying to do it on your own. So the question is, how do we create wow factors for our attendees while delivering top-notch client events, all while running a profitable business? These are the questions, and I'm here to give you the answers. I'm Chrissy Thompson, and welcome to the Event Agency Secrets podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Event Agency Secrets podcast. Today on the show, I am so excited to be welcoming my good friend and former colleague, Christina Oh. Christina is the founder and CEO at Woah Events, based in the Bay Area. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is so fun to have you here. Obviously, we have a lot of history. We work together in-house, and then we both went on to found our own event businesses. So this is one of my favorite episodes that I've been looking forward to have you on here, just because, yeah, I'm really proud of both of us. And I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of it. So for those of you who don't know Christina, let's have Christina. Why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us what you do and how you help your clients?
Totally. As Chrissy mentioned, I am an event planner. I have my own company, Woah Events, and a lot of that inspiration actually came from Chrissy when she started Dynamo. I remember really specifically, there was this one night at a Taulia event, and we were just talking about what life would look like in a couple of years. And she was telling me about this vision, which became Dynamo Events, which is so cool. So Woah Events, we do two different things. One is event strategy. So we work with a lot of different tech companies to help them think through their holistic event plan. So from what do they want to do in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, whether it's their pre-event, during event, post-event process, deciding which events to be at, and how do they work better with other departments, whether that be sales, customer success, the executive team. The second thing we do is what more event agencies typically do is we help design and plan events. So that ranges from retreats and offsites to conferences and roadshows. But all in the corporate world, because we found that's what we love to do.
Awesome. And yeah, so are you really focusing on the tech industry in particular? Is that?
Yeah, I think that because that's where my experience comes from, I've ended up working with a lot of different tech companies. I've also worked with a lot of membership organizations, so groups that are trying to create some sort of community. But so far, it has been mostly those types of companies.
Cool. And that totally makes sense. I think so. If anyone listened to our first episode with Grace Gittinger, she also came from the tech world. And obviously that makes sense. If you're highly networked in a particular industry, why not help yourself and create that niche that you actually do have expertise in to help you grow your business. And niching down, we're going to talk about this a lot in this show. Niching down is one of the best things that you can do for your business, and frankly in any business, but especially in events. There are really unique pieces to what we're doing that are industry to industry. So it makes a lot of sense. But I love that you're working with sort of like membership organizations as well, because anyone that needs to build community, live events, of course, needs to be an integral part to that, right? So were those organizations already having live events, or did you help them kind of craft the idea around what that would be?
Yeah, so I think that membership organizations are interesting because they have a wide range of events. They have just meetings that are set up by the members in each chapter. So that could be as simple as hey, let's all get happy hour at this place, and it's really informal. So they were having some of those types of events, but they are starting to transition more into their first conference, their first road show. And then they do have an event series specifically for CEOs. So inviting CEOs to these really cool summits in cool places. So I think that that's where they're looking for a little bit more assistance. Whereas, what's cool about community is it doesn't have to be overly orchestrated. It really could be hey, on Mondays after work, we go to this bar and we meet up and we just talk about whatever. So I think that it's cool to see the different range they have in events.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to think about. I think a lot of live events for a lot of our clients sound really scary, right? They're I know that there's a lot that goes into it. And that's why I need to work with Christina or Chrissy or whoever, right? But I think it is part of our job. If something is going to be simpler than maybe they're thinking, it's like us, we kind of have to coach them along that process. If they're going to get to their goal with a smaller event, then by all means, like do a smaller, simpler event that's also still going to help them get to their goal. So I think that's really smart. So are you helping them sort of think through what those possibilities are? Like, and is that part of your proposal process? This is something we've always like toyed around with, like, should we be charging for consulting and like helping them get there? Or is this us like building a proposal, that we're not going to charge for, we're only going to charge if they end up moving forward with the event?
Totally. I think that, I mean, scope creep is like a very real thing, which is hard to define a proposal if they don't even know what they want yet.
Right.
So we've done like a mix of just, I think that's where the strategy piece comes in, where, hey, like if you're looking for like strategy help on designing your first roadshow series, setting it up as a package, but just the strategy component. That doesn't include the actual legwork of finding the venues, back ordering the swag, all the nitty-gritty things. And then if they want to move on after that, then they can still continue with a different proposal. And then depending on, client situations, and I would love to hear everyone else's thought on proposals, because I feel like we're all trying to handle it in different ways. But with clients I've worked with for a long time, I'm happy to do one-off, like, hey, like, it sounds like you need a little bit of help. It's not clearly defined. Like, let's do like up to like 10 hours at an hourly rate, just so we can help you solve this problem.
I think that's really smart. And yeah, frankly, it's something that whatever, we're in an industry that's all about hospitality and giving, right? Like we'd like to go above and beyond. So I think we can kind of fall into this trap of like doing too much before we have a contract signed to try to help. Yeah. So definitely something that I have fallen into, even probably more recently than I'd like to admit, as far as helping think through things before having a contract in place, and even going so far as creating like full on event budgets that are not just an estimate for our scope of work and what we'd charge for our services, but are actually what the entire event would cost. But I am trying to break that out now in terms of, here's a consulting package for you to create your event budget. And then if you'd like to go and plan it yourself, great. If you'd like an event planning company to help actually produce it, then let's talk about the next step, which would be our regular scope of work for actually planning the event, right? So
hard though, because you get so excited about an event where you're like, oh my gosh, like that sounds so cool, and the wheels start turning, and an hour later you're like, well, I've already done all this work because I thought it was a really cool event.
Right. Yes, totally. It's easy to fall into. We're very excitable. We love what we do. So I totally get it. But yeah, just take away for anybody listening, really, really remember to value yourself in that process. If you are spending your time on it, you do need to be charging for it. It doesn't matter sort of where you're at in your career. If you have the expertise, I mean, if you are just getting started and it makes sense for you to do something pro bono at first, sure. But if you are as experienced as say me or Christina, you definitely need to be charging for the time that you're putting into that. So know your value and go ahead and just charge. Do it.
Totally.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So let's get into how you got started. You shared a little bit about like the inspiration, but how did it actually happen? Like how did Woah Events get born?
Totally. So I was working in-house at a tech company, and we were doing an insane amount of events a year. That first year, I was the only events person. We did over 65 events that year. So it was busy.
Yeah.
But then you're trying to also manage all these other things while you're at the company. And I felt like as time passed, I was spending less time doing the meat of what I loved. And instead, I was focusing on, the political things here or there. And I actually love that I can come in with a fresh set of eyes with a client and be like, hey, like these are some really good ideas based on, what I see about the culture of your company. But also like being really invested in the event and knowing that that's your primary focus. You don't have to be thinking about the other things. So I think that, that seed got planted in my head. And at that time, Chrissy and Dynamo Events was doing so well. And I was thinking like, wow, like this is possible. Like this isn't just like some dream that I have that'll never happen. So then I ended up taking the leap and I think something really cool about events is that they're so public facing that people have experienced your events. And so
Mm.
through word of mouth, if you've done a good job, then people will come back around and be like, hey, like I heard you're doing this thing and I would love to work with you. And I think that has been one of the cool experiences of opening your own business, just knowing that your network does care about you and think you're doing well, and wants to support you in that way.
Yeah, so true. And that just really highlights how important it is to be obsessed with customer experience. People in the tech world talk about that all the time. Customer experience is like the number one thing. But, it is trickling out to other industries as well. And again, being in the hospitality world, I think that we're really good at that. But it serves us well because that we're good at that in terms of creating that referral stream for sure. So yeah, it's been so awesome to see what you've been able to create, Christina, over the past few years. Really, really impressed and just loving seeing what you're doing on social, like you know, the different venues that you've been sourcing. Actually, let's talk about that a little bit because you didn't mention that in your services, but you do just venue sourcing as well,
I
right?
do. Yep. So I
Okay.
do just venue sourcing, and then sometimes that's tied in with event management too. Um,
Yep.
and I just love it. Like I'm such a nerd about venues where I'm looking at them in my free time anyway. So I'm like, all right, like this is an easy value to add.
We are cut from the same cloth. Yes. So let's talk about that a little bit, just in case anyone that's listening isn't familiar with that service. So, talk a little bit about how that works, specifically with hotel venue sourcing.
Totally. So, and because of the pandemic, I feel like it's mostly been hotels just because there has been clear cleaning and health guidelines, which is actually a reason I've encouraged clients to go that way, and I'm sure that'll
Mm,
change. But venue sourcing for hotels, I think that I was talking to a client about this recently, but I feel like I have this funny superpower, and I bet Chrissy has it too, where you're able to tell if a venue is a quality venue without even ever visiting it. And
mm,
obviously, you want to see the space in person, but just with enough experience of looking at sites, reading reviews, and doing all your backdoor references,
yep.
we've become really skilled at being like, oh, like we have a good feeling about this venue.
Hmm.
So, part of that venue sourcing is using that skill and helping clients who aren't doing this all the time.
Right.
Maybe they plan this retreat once a year and they want to plan something super meaningful for their employees, but they might just be like, I want to go to Arizona. And that's
Hmm.
it. And they don't
Hmm.
know exactly what type of experience they're looking for. But not only do we have a little bit of that intuition, but we're also able to imagine, like, wow, with this space, like we could see like team building happening here and like little moments for like just connecting over here, and we visualize all of that. So I
Yep.
think that that is part of our superpower and being able to narrow down the quality venues, and then also bringing that level of negotiation of, hey, like, are we getting a good deal? Are we making sure things are flexible for as long as possible?
Yep.
Are things going to be a good experience and within the budget that you're hoping to work in?
Totally. I love all of that, especially helping them visualize what could happen in that space. It's not just about, okay, does it tick the general boxes, but what beyond the event space even would make sense for them to be thinking about, and how is that going to not only add to their attendees experience, but also add to helping them reach their goals with their event, right? Always tying it back to whatever the ROI is that they're trying to hit. So, yeah, I love all of that. Cool. Yeah, we love venue sourcing. Chef's kiss. Love venue sourcing so much. It's my favorite part of the process. I know you love it too. So, yeah. Cool. All right. So we've talked about who you help, what you do, sort of how you got started, but let's kind of shift gears and talk about why you got started. I mean, you did talk about this a little bit, but in terms of like what's getting you up every day and like, the impact that you want to make or anything like that, what would you like to share?
Ooh, getting deep here.
I
Um,
know. We're going to get deep in this podcast because we're not just, we're here, we're business owners. And I can share a little bit while you think about yours. I mean, for me, I wanted to have freedom and flexibility in my life. I definitely am a type A control freak type person, which I think also suits the role of event planning, right? Um, but yeah, I wanted the freedom and flexibility, especially because I want to become a mom. And it's there's a whole other world of craziness that comes with entrepreneurship, right? So there's like this like, you know, allure of freedom and economic opportunity and flexibility, um, which is great, and all those things do come, but there's all these other things that come with entrepreneurship too that are really crazy. But for me, I feel like it weighs out, and eventually, you know, it is going to allow me to be able to have some income in the business coming in while I'm able to take a maternity leave at the same time. So yeah, that's my why, is making a big impact, but also personally for me, you know, creating that flexibility and freedom. So that's my
Yeah. I mean,
why.
I think that flexibility and freedom is huge. And I think it looks different than what people expect, right? In that,
Right.
you know, when you started, you were a one woman operation, and that meant that vacations weren't really vacations.
Totally. Yeah.
And so, you know, trying to figure out, you know, we're finding a way to earn that flexibility,
Yes.
and also on our terms,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is like the really powerful thing of what do we want our work life, our personal life to look like,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we get to like design that dream life that we want.
Yes.
So I think that it's both a flexibility of, you know, getting to decide how we spend our time, but also just really getting to choose the projects that we want to be on.
Yep.
I'm an introvert, which like I think people find that funny for event planners, but I think it totally makes sense wanting to be the behind the scene person versus the
Right.
person on stage.
Yep.
And I think that meant I actually felt it quite challenging to work in-house at a company and having to deal with a lot of the politics. And
Yeah.
I think that, you know, being, and not to say that there aren't, you know, their own challenges of being a business owner, but I didn't actually want to spend time thinking about when I was going to get my next promotion. I want to achieve high quality things, but I'm
Yeah.
not career ambitious in the sense that I need to be like the president of the United States or things like that. The titles are less important to me. So I
Yeah.
think that starting my own business allowed me to focus on I want to do everything the best that I can. And I don't actually need these external markers to tell me that I'm doing a good job, but I can focus on, you know, here's the value that I'm bringing. I'm able to help people. I'm doing it in an impactful way. And I'm not stressing out about, you know, these external things that maybe actually aren't that important.
Totally. I love all of everything that you just said, totally resonates. And I think it probably will resonate with a lot of people that are listening to this podcast because it is, you know, geared towards event business owners. So that's what we're all going to have our different whys, and we'll get into that on the podcast with everyone that we interview. But I think there probably is going to be that thread, that common stream of, you know, we're high achievers and we want to do things on our terms.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and I love how you said it though, that, you know, you're focusing your time on things that matter. Like you didn't want to be spending your time thinking about promotions and things that maybe don't actually matter to you, right? So you want to be a high achiever, but you want to focus that energy in a way that actually makes sense and fulfills you. So super smart. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, let's get into it. I mean, we kind of alluded to this, that okay, we have these other challenges, right, that come with entrepreneurship. It's not all just like dream life being hashtag girl boss, right? Like there's a lot of real stuff that comes up. So, any challenges that you've had that you'd be willing to share with our audience that you've been able to overcome?
Totally. I mean, I want to talk about the family one. You brought that up a little
Yes.
earlier about wanting to be a mom, and Chrissy knows this, but I have a 1.5 year old. So was born during the pandemic, which actually ended up being cool because I did take a mat leave when no events were happening. But
Yep.
I think that was a unique situation. You know, next time around, I don't know what exactly that's going to look like. So I
Yes.
think that there's business planning on thinking about how do you build out a business that's sustainable, that can exist if you're not doing everything every day. And, you know, even if that's, you know, 2 or 3 years down the line, I feel like the planning has to start now. And
Yeah.
luckily, you know, we're all good planners here. But
For sure.
but that's a challenging thing to plan because you're trying to think about, well, how do I make sure the business is growing, but also like say someone else wants to take some sort of leave. Like it isn't just about you anymore. It's about all these people that are growing within your business. So I think that's something I've been thinking a lot about.
Yes.
Um, and then
Gearing
the
up.
other And then the other challenge is I think that early on in your business, it's so easy to say yes to everything.
Yep.
And I think finding that focus of, hey, like, I don't want to like, I don't want to work 100 hours a week every week. I mean, event weeks can be crazy. So sometimes you are doing that, but
We'll allow it
um,
on event weeks only, but yeah, that's not
exactly.
sustainable.
So, you don't want to work 100 hours a week. And, we're trying to be mindful of where we're spending our energy and our time. So I think I'm also trying to figure out where my focus is. And then, like, we have all these helper mentalities where we want to say yes and we want to help, but really we should be saying no. So like
Yeah.
practicing that muscle, being like, hey, like I'm sorry, but I actually don't have, time or bandwidth or whatever it is for that.
Yes. And it's so, so important to flex that muscle, even if you have the bandwidth, even
Yeah,
if you have the time, if it's not the right project for you, to say no so that you do leave the space and energy to let the things in that you do want to say yes to. And I'll be the first one to say that I said yes to a lot of stuff during the pandemic that I would not normally say yes to just because I wanted to keep the lights on. And we had to do it, and that's fine. But this is now that we're in the time that we're in, we really have the opportunity to say, okay, events are coming back. We really can hone in on the things that we want to spend our energy on that are going to light us up and that we're really good at and we can feel really confident in, right?
totally.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I am very excited to see how things go for you as a mom in the future. You're very inspiring. Your little boy is the cutest. And I'm sure as you choose to expand your family in the future, it will be something that we can hopefully connect on. Hopefully, I'll have a
Yeah,
baby by that time too. And I'll have gone through it. But I also totally relate, thinking about how I'm going to be able to take a maternity leave and how anyone else on the team will be able to take a maternity leave. Like that is on me
yeah,
to start putting a cushion into, and I already have, start putting a cushion and,
totally.
putting that into our operating expenses bucket for the future
Yeah.
because it's important, right? That's like, that is, if that's my why, like I better be focused on that, right? So in the financial planning. Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. Well, that said, what's next for Woah events? What are you thinking about the future? What do you got cooking up?
I think so we are bringing two full-time people on board in April. So I'm really excited for that and also a little bit scared.
Yeah.
There's that bit of um I think that we're all self-starters and we're used to doing everything ourselves. And there's a bit of that letting go that you have to do when you bring new people on board.
Yes.
So, hoping that I'm able to do that and, trusting in the team that I did hire. So, and then, it's a busy events year like it is for most of us. So I think that um, just planning all those things and starting to plan hopefully further out in the future. I know that 2022 calendars are already really, really booked. So starting to think about the next year so that we get that flexibility that we talked about, where we feel like we have control of our lives because we aren't getting pulled into things a month out.
Yes, yes. I'm definitely hoping for that. I'm hoping it's something that we can coach clients towards is booking things out a little bit further out because it was understandable. People were scared. They had to be smart about the risks that they were taking. And so all of a sudden when they got the green lights to the events, it's like, okay, now we're 2 months out. Let's get back to being 6 months, a year out if we can.
Yep,
Even more than that if possible. But yeah, I
totally.
definitely agree with you. Cool. Well, it's very exciting. I can't wait to see how things go. And I know that you'll be an amazing boss. I will tell you firsthand, it is so hard to delegate at first. And I still work on it every day. Anyone from my team that's listening to this will know it's hard for me to let go sometimes, but that's just how we are. And over time it will get better. So give yourself some grace in, the first few months of having your new team members. And I'm sure that it will really, really reap rewards over the years to come.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Cool. All right. Last question that we ask everybody on the podcast is, do you have any secrets about the event industry that you'd be willing to share that would just help any other event business owners do better business?
Totally. I want to circle back to the whole like saying yes and saying no thing. I think
Okay.
saying no is such a big thing. And I know that that's something I'm not good at. So that is something I would recommend, like write it somewhere, have it as your laptop background, have it as a piece of paper on your wall, reminding you what's your why, what type of events you do, so that you aren't straying outside of that. And it's natural in the beginning to, maybe be a little further outside because you're starting your business. But the goal is for you to have the business of your dreams, not someone else's dreams. So you want to make sure that every time you're saying yes, it's working towards that goal, and saying no when it's not, because you never know when an amazing opportunity might pop up. And when you said yes to that thing you really didn't want to say yes to, that might have actually canceled out something that you're excited about.
Here, here. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I think too, even like because of all the things we talked about how much we care about making sure everyone's taken care of and how excited we get for other people, even if it's not something that's a good fit for us. If you even have like a block of text written out and just like have it up on your wall, like here's how I say no to something. I honestly, I feel like I need that. And that what you just said, like really is like, okay, I have an action item now. I'm going to go do this, because sometimes you're like, I don't know how specifically would I say that. Like you really need like a little chunk of a little bit that you can kind of refer to, so that it's said in a way that you're going to be happy with afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, very smart, Christina. I'm so excited to see what's to come for you and Woah Events. I think that's all the time we have for today. But if anyone wants to get in touch with you or just wants to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is woevents.com, and that is also my handle on all social media. So feel free to reach out. And thanks for your time today, Chrissy.
Thank you, Christina.